The story of King Midas. The story of King Midas is a myth about the tragedy of greed and narrates what happens when true happiness is not recognized. Midas was a man who wished that everything he touched would turn into gold. However, he had not thought that this wish was not actually a blessing, but a curse. His greed invites us to think and realize the consequences that may lead us to become slaves of our own desires. The phrase, the Midas touch, comes from this myth and is used to say that somebody has a good fortune. The wish. Midas was a king of great fortune who ruled the country of Phygira in Asia Minor. He had everything a king could wish for. He lived in luxury in a great castle. He shared his life of abundance with his beautiful daughter. Even though he was very rich, Midas thought that his great happiness was provided by gold. His greed was such that he used to spend his days counting his golden coins. Occasionally, he used to cover his body with gold objects, as if he wanted to bathe in them. Money was his obsession. One day, Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, passed through the kingdom of Midas. One of his companions, a satyr named Silenus, got delayed along the way. Silenus got tired and decided to take a nap in the famous rose garden surrounding the palace of King Midas. There, he was found by the king, who recognized him instantly and invited him to spend a few days at his palace. After that, Midas took him to Dionysus, the god of celebration. Very grateful to Midas for his kindness, promised Midas to satisfy any wish of him. Midas thought for a while, and then he said, "I hope that everything I touch becomes gold." Dionysus warned the king to think well about his wish, but Midas was positive. Dionysus could do nothing else and promised the king that from that following day, everything he touched would turn into gold. The curse. The next day, Midas woke up eager to see if his wish would become true. He extended his arm, touching a small table that immediately turned into gold. Midas jumped up with happiness. He then touched a chair, the carpet, the door, his bathtub, a table, and so he kept on, running in his madness all over his palace until he got exhausted and happy at the same time. He sat at the table to have breakfast and took a rose between his hands to smell its fragrance. When he touched it, the rose became gold. "I will have to absorb the fragrance without touching the roses, I suppose," he thought in disappointment. And without even thinking, he ate a grape, but it also turned into gold. The same happened with a slice of bread and a glass of water. Suddenly, he started to sense fear. Tears filled his eyes, and at that moment, his beloved daughter entered the room. When Midas hugged her, she turned into a golden statue. Despaired and fearful, he raised his arms and prayed to Dionysus to take this curse from him. The atonement. The god heard Midas and felt sorry for him. He told Midas to go to the river of Pactolus and wash his hands. Midas did so. He ran to the river and was astonished to see the gold flowing from his hands. The ancient Greeks said they had found gold on the banks of the river of Pactolus. When he turned home, everything Midas had touched had become normal again. So the moral of the story is, do not let material objects become the forefront of those that matter to you the most, which is your family. So, You would think that after his bout with the golden touch, that perhaps King Midas would have acquired a little common sense. Well, once upon a time, a long time ago, Pan, the god of shepherds, challenged Apollo to a musical duel. Pan insisted his flute of reeds could produce a more beautiful melody than Apollo's city harp. The two agreed on a contest with judges. One of the judges was King Midas. After hearing the two melodies, all but one of the judges chose Apollo as the winner. But one judge, King Midas, preferred Pan's tune. Furious that anyone could prefer a reedy pipe to his musical excellence, Apollo cooed, "I see the problem. It's your ears. They're too small to hear properly. Let me fix that for you." King Midas felt his ears quiver. His ears sprang out, and ending in the large furry ears of a donkey. King Midas was horrified. He grabbed his ears. "Pan, help me," he cried. But Pan, with a quick nervous glance at Apollo, turned his back. King Midas tried to hide his ears from his subjects by wearing a variety of hats, heavy helmets, and bulky scarves. The only person who saw his ears was his barber. King Midas made his barber promise he would never tell a soul. His barber kept his word. But keeping such a huge secret to himself was driving him crazy. Finally, the barber went up to a mountain and almost to the edge of a cliff. He dug a hole in the midst of the reeds. He looked about to make sure no one was near. Then he whispered in the hole, "King Midas has donkey ears. King Midas has donkey ears." Having gotten his secret off his chest, he felt much better. He returned home, sure that he kept his word. Unfortunately for King Midas, the barber had dug right into a piece of echo. Pieces of echo were scattered all over the mountain's kingdom. In fact, pieces of echo were scattered all over the world. Although I suppose some people might think it was only a sound of the wind in the reeds, it was really a piece of echo, whispering over and over, "The king has donkey ears. The king has donkey ears." Sound travels well in the mountains, even whispers. It's not long before the entire kingdom knew the king's secret. Now, prior to this, the king often warned the hairdresser, "You must promise never to tell anyone that I have ears shaped like a donkey, or I will send my guards to your house, and they will take you away to my prison, where you shall remain for the rest of your life." Well, it didn't take very long at all before the king realized that everybody knew his secret, and he was very embarrassed and very, very angry. The king remembered that the only man who knew about his donkey-shaped ears was his barber. So he had the guards go to his house. The guards took a hold of the barber and dragged him back to the palace and threw the man into the prison, where he was told he would spend the rest of his life. The barber pleaded with the king to let him go. But the king said to the barber, you promised me that you would not share my secret, but you could not keep it to yourself. I trusted in you, and you betrayed me. For this, you will spend the rest of your life in prison, and you will learn that it is always important to keep your promises to others and not to share secrets. And so the barber remained in prison for the rest of his life, and he felt sorry for sharing the king's secret when he had promised not to do so. Now, there's two morals of this story. First is bias. If something appeals to you, and if you prefer something to your preference or your liking, then it's your choice, your freedom to do so, to favor that. But if someone else favors something over your liking, it doesn't necessarily mean that theirs is better or yours is better. But in competition, there is always a better competitor, and the competitor that's better and wins should be given that award. So in the King Midas story, he favored Pan because that was his friend, regardless that Apollo was a better musician. You cannot be biased. And for the unfortunate outcome of King Midas's barber, he told him and he made him promise not to tell his secret. And you know what the moral here is? If someone tells you something in confidence, strict confidence, take it with you till the very end, until that person feels comfortable enough and sure enough to reveal that secret to others.
This is Season 2 of the WR Podcast. Let freedom ring. More insightful, more delightful, and more punk rock attitude. With your host, Will Ramos.